Hi, I'm Lisa Entwistle, founder of Wealthy Living and host of Wealthy Living Radio Show. I help open-minded, big-hearted people connect to themselves, others, and the world around them, guiding them to live a wealthy life both personally and professionally. Each fortnight, I have conversations with a variety of professionals to discuss all different topics in wellness, from physical, emotional, and spiritual. We discuss how our choices impact our work, our relationships, and our health, and suggest ways to help you live a wealthy life. So there's no doubt that we all want to perform to the best of our ability, whether it's in our jobs, our sport, our leisure activities, or our personal relationships. Yet this is not always the case. So one of the reasons for this is that we feel fatigued. When we're fatigued, we increase our risk of injury, mistakes, and even the possibility of total burnout. These mistakes can not only affect our own well-being, but the well-being of those around us and those that we relate to, both personally and professionally. Fatigue is a multifaceted challenge and requires understanding and knowledge to ensure that we keep it at bay or we even eliminate it. So this week, I'm really excited to chat with my special guest, John Toomey, or better known as the Fatigue Professor. John has been working in and leading the way in health as a health educator since 1980. As a professional speaker and trainer, John has presented over 2,200 seminars in the corporate arena in Australia, New Zealand, the US, and Southeast Asia. He has published over 500 articles, including publications like Wellbeing Magazine, the Melbourne Age, the Melbourne Herald Sun, and he's a regular contributor to the Huffington Post. John has also worked extensively as a health and wellness commentator in Australian radio on stations like 774 ABC Melbourne, 3AW, and 2GB. John has lectured in health and wellness areas at top universities in Melbourne. In 2013, he was asked to address a fatigue and culture problem for a Queensland mining services company. So, researching all the official guidelines on fatigue, he was really stunned by what wasn't said. It seemed that fatigue was being blamed on poor or inadequate sleep. So, taking his wealth of knowledge from years of conditioning athletes and in the corporate arena, he created his now world-renowned fatigue prevention program. So it gives me so much pleasure to welcome John here today. So welcome, John.
Hey, Lisa. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, so I thought it might be really good for the listeners to first, if you can clarify for us, what is your definition of fatigue?
Well, it's really interesting. You know, you look at a toddler. They wake up, they come to life, they're full of beans, they do what they do, and eventually they get tired and they go to sleep and the cycle continues. But what happens with a lot of adults is that they wake up in the morning and they don't reach that point where they feel full of beans.
Yep.
They don't feel energetic and they feel a little sluggish. And so they carry this feeling through their day and potentially through their lives. And I call it the syndrome of just feeling ordinary all the time. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people just get used to feeling ordinary and they forget what it feels like to really feel full of beans. Mm-hmm. Now, so that's a constant level of low-level fatigue. Then you can go right through to the other end of fatigue where you've got an interstate truck driver who's falling asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
You know?
Not good.
Or somebody who's operating a dangerous piece of equipment who's drowsy and dozing, or somebody who's handling big financial transactions who's drowsy and dozing, you know, and mistakes get made, and when that happens, disaster can follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I definitely experienced that myself, and even this morning, for example, my son came in, and he comes in every day full of beans, and you know, there's such a difference between the way I feel and the way that he feels in the morning. And there are, and I know for myself as well, different days I can feel, regardless of how much sleep I've had, I can feel really energetic, and other days I can't.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's my own mindset too.
Yeah. Well, see, for me, it's a big red flag because I wake up full of beans every morning. And, I've always done it. That's the way I choose to live my life. And I wake up feeling sluggish. I get interested in that and ask myself, why am I feeling that? And I normally discover something which I can then rectify and everything's fine again.
Yeah.
But, so many people, including I've got 8 siblings, all of them, sluggish in their lives.
Yeah.
And they're not really questioning why. They put it down to age or work stress or being too busy or whatever. There's lots of excuses. But at the end of the day, there is the opportunity to learn about it and become responsible.
Yeah, totally. And that goes across so many things, doesn't it? That we, if we reflect on what's happening, using our body as our intelligence of what's going on, and then look for ask the question, look for the reason, and then do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are the main symptoms? Like you discussed a little bit in that definition there, but what are the main symptoms that you see of fatigue? Like if someone wants to know, are they just tired, or are they fatigued, or are they at the other end? What are the symptoms?
Well, it can go on a range. Like the basic one that you notice is the people who find themselves yawning at 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. They've only been out of bed for 3.5 hours and they're yawning at 10:30 in the morning. And most people ignore that and try to step around it. Then you can go a bit further where later in the day people hit sleepiness. Now, that's not dangerous if you work in an office.
Yep.
But if you're driving a bulldozer, it is.
Yep.
Then it goes to the point of a person being so fatigued that they start using stimulants to try and pick themselves up. So they start using energy drinks and those sorts of things. And I can't understand why energy drinks don't carry the same taxes that cigarettes carry, because they're just as destructive. People use sugar as a pick-me-up to try and get them through, so then that's creating lots of other implications in their body. Then we go to the next step where people start using amphetamines, and that gets really dangerous then. And especially now with this really destructive drug, ice. Because, a young friend of mine, he got addicted to ice. And I said, why did you do it? And he said, because the first time I took it was because I'd been on a bender and I had some stuff that I really had to do, and a mate gave it to me to try it. And he said, I was superhuman. I've never felt that good and that strong and that energetic. And he said, so I thought I could use that more often. And of course, it got hold of him. So that's really destructive then. The other one is people getting so tired that they resist it and then they can't sleep.
Yeah.
So it becomes cyclic then. And then the other areas of fatigue which are really quite significant are where people are creating really stressful situations for themselves and they're secreting enormous amounts of adrenaline into their system and they're fighting against that and they're taking sleeping tablets and maybe they're taking Valium and those sorts of things. And eventually, their adrenal glands can become fatigued and then that can lead them to an extraordinary level of tiredness that can take weeks to get over.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a huge cycle and, it can start off with something really minor and then as it goes on, if it's not addressed, it can become more and more major to the point that, you're just stuck in a cycle that's really hard to break.
You bet.
So, we talk about those sort of symptoms and obviously, if one of the implications is obviously taking drugs in the end, which is obviously not a good thing. But what are the other impacts and implications around fatigue, not so much in what someone's consuming in order to sort of take the tired feeling away, but what sort of things can happen that you've seen in the workplace or ripple effects from that, like outside of the workplace?
Well, certainly, people crashing cars.
Yep.
They doze off, microsleep, they crash a car.
Yep.
Or somebody puts their arm into a machine and all of a sudden they haven't got an arm anymore. Those are fatigue.
Yeah, I heard that on the radio yesterday, actually. A guy was stuck for hours until emergency came in. His arm was stuck in a machine.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And he's in critical condition.
Well, because when people get that level of fatigue, their awareness drops right down.
Yep.
They're as good as asleep. But the other side of it is that, and this happens with a lot of construction workers, They go home from work and they feel that exhausted, they plonk into their chair and fall asleep. So they don't connect with their kids. So
or their partner.
Yeah, exactly. And that was my next point. But like with the kids, instead of dad being the one who goes out, or mum, because his mum's working construction industry as well, instead of them coming home and engaging with the kids and taking them out and being part of the local footy club or netball team or whatever, they just crash and burn and the kids are left to their own devices,
Literally devices.
Devices, absolutely. And see how we've created that. And but then also this thing of, couples going to bed and just falling asleep, and then there's no intimacy, and then that builds a resentment in the relationship and a disconnection.
Definitely.
And then all sorts of the wheels can really fall off then.
That's right.
And the other end of that as well is snoring and sleep apnea. That's such a misunderstood area. And, I always ask the question, how many people in this room live with somebody who's been known to falsely accuse them of snoring? And of course,
because no one ever snores.
And they put their hands up, and a lot of people, probably 50% of the room, have got a snoring problem.
Yep.
Which means they're not sleeping well.
Interesting, because they probably feel that they're sleeping brilliantly because they don't even know that they're snoring.
That's right. It's amazing. And, there's an old Russian doctor years ago who did some work on this. And I know we're stepping into a solution area here, but it's pretty crucial. Because if you've got a snorer, it means their partner probably doesn't sleep that well either.
Oh, 100%.
And then there's conflict in the relationship and resentment. And I mean, every now and then I'll go away with work and I'll share a room with somebody who's a snorer. And I lie there and I think, wow, how could somebody put up with this every night?
Oh, totally. I couldn't.
No, and it's, but anyway, this old Russian doctor years ago, 80 years ago, worked out what was creating all this, and he developed a breathing technique to repair these conditions. Because snoring and sleep apnea, like asthma, are conditions that arise from mouth breathing.
Yes.
And you end up blowing off too much carbon dioxide, which then changes all of your breathing mechanics.
Yep.
And things start to happen, abnormalities in breathing. And so this old Dr. Buteyko created this breathing technique where you can relearn to breathe. Now, It's hard work. I did it myself. I was a chronic asthmatic, like really bad asthmatic. And I heard about it when I was about 37, and it took me till I was 42 to give it a crack, And I did, and it took 2 weeks, and, I'm 58 now, and I haven't wheezed a breath since I was 42.
How long did you say it took you?
2 weeks.
2 weeks? That's not
2
long.
weeks. But the first 2 days, it was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, easy
20
to
minutes
give up.
morning, 20 minutes at night. It was such hard work, and it was frightening,
Yeah.
changing the way you breathe. But, I've got countless stories of construction workers who have taken it on and they've cured their snoring
What's
and their
it
sleep
called?
apnea. It's the Buteyko method, Buteyko. And there's Buteyko practitioners all over Australia, and the poor things are Buteyko. And the poor things, they hardly make a good living because the Asthma Foundation keeps saying, no, it doesn't work, there's no evidence.
Oh.
Well, there's so much evidence. But, they've got sponsors that are pretty opposed to that.
Yeah.
But, they should be the wealthiest professionals in Australia because, boy, their service is needed.
Yeah, I know some people who, I don't know if it's this method, but they've definitely done breathwork training, both as practitioners, and I know people that have done breathwork courses, and they just say it's life-changing.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, and I know that even personally, I know that I need to do one because I'm quite a mouth breather, and that's kind of like a more of a structural issue. But
part of Buteyko is you have to tape your mouth up at night.
Oh, I couldn't do that.
And when I first did that, I went to bed and my partner looked at me and she said, your eyes are like poached eggs. And I said, yeah, I'm frightened.
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
I felt frightened, but I hung in there with it, and I'm so glad I did. I had one young guy come up to me.
Oh my God, I'd get severe anxiety.
One young guy came up to me at a seminar and he said, hi John, how are you? And I said, I'm good. And he said, you don't remember me, do you? And I said, I don't. I said, where did I meet? He said, 18 months ago I came to one of your seminars and I come and told you about my life falling apart. He was 30, grossly overweight. His wife hated him because he had terrible sleep apnea. She used to sleep down the other end of the house and he still kept her awake at night. and she wanted to leave the marriage and take the 2 kids. And he was here, totally vulnerable, devastated. I told him about Buteyko, and here he was standing in front of me, and he said, I went straight back to my office and went on the internet, found a practitioner, rang, and I had my first appointment that night. And he said, you lied to me. And I said, why did I lie to you? And he said, you'd said it would take 14 days. It took 12.
Wow.
And he said, I started sleeping normally. I woke up refreshed. I started exercising again. I felt good. I've lost 32 kilograms. And he said, my wife and I are back in love, and we're expecting our 3rd child.
Oh, what a great story.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh?
That's awesome.
So he took it on,
Oh, amazing. Wow. I'm sure we could, that's incredible. So obviously that's one of the impact things, the way that you breathe and then the effect that it has, rippling out onto your relationships and onto your own well-being and how you're feeling. And then obviously if you're not feeling good, that also has a flow-on effect.
Yeah.
But what other things do you see more that it's impacting? Obviously, cutting your arms and, the injury-related stuff with the construction industry. But what about other industries that aren't as obvious?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that really happens is alcohol consumption goes up because people start self-medicating to try and sleep.
Yep.
And the problem with drinking alcohol in the evenings? It takes out your first cycle of REM sleep. So you miss your first cycle of REM sleep, so it kills the quality of your sleep. So that's a big one. But what I find in people in office situations, whether it be real estate, banking, finance, legal, whatever, they've got massive workloads. The workloads and the demands on them are extraordinary. We don't think about it. For example, a lawyer, I had a conversation with a partner in a law firm 22 years ago, and he said it's all changed. And I said, why? And he said, because people used to write us a letter telling us what they wanted.
Yep.
Within a few days, we would write back saying, thank you for your instructions. We'll be back to you within a week.
Yep.
And then we would look at it and we would write back to them. He said, now people fax the instructions in and they're on the phone before it's come off the fax wanting to know what we're going to do about it.
Wow. Pressure.
Now, we've gone way beyond the fax, right? So it's constant load. So these people have got constant demand for work. And for example, the accounting firm and law firms, they've got to justify what they do every 6 minutes.
Yes.
So imagine the stress of trying to adhere to that when all your body wants to do is curl up in the fetal position under the desk and go to sleep. That's high pressure. So that's where you find those professionals starting to use amphetamines and starting to drink too much coffee. And then at the end of the day, drinking alcohol to calm themselves down, And that goes through a catastrophic cycle then. And they stop exercising, start putting on weight. Next thing you know, they've got a cancer diagnosis or they've got heart disease or, the whole lot just goes out the window.
Massive. So that's like the office worker or the ones that are in, high-pressure jobs with the office workers. They're getting, the implications and the impact seems to be that they're self-medicating, I suppose, whether it be with drugs, caffeine, alcohol, or otherwise.
Yeah.
And obviously it can also have an effect on their quality of work, mistakes, those sort of things. And then there's more stress comes in because they've made a mistake and they've got to be accountable and all those sort of things.
You bet.
So what about, that's like the office area. What about something which comes to mind for me, which is an obvious area where there is a lot of burnout, and that's the whole healthcare profession. Because like, I suppose, with construction, safety is a massive issue there.
Yeah, you bet.
So not only, it sounds to me like healthcare is an area where they've got the double lot. They've got the pressure and the stress of the workload, especially even GPs. It's like a conveyor belt now, like in, out, in, out, in, out.
Yeah.
And, when they make a mistake, it's not just a mistake that is affecting the bottom line of a company, which can be really stressful too, but it's actually could be someone's life.
Well, here's a brutal bottom line of that. I go to an event every year called the Global Wellness Summit. It's an invitation-only event for wellness thought leaders from all around the world.
Yeah,
There's about 500 of us, right? And and I get to sit down and eat lunch with some of the most extraordinary people on the planet,
Yeah.
and sit in their seminars and listen to them, and then talk with them after and share ideas. And last year, Professor Richard Carmona, who was the 17th Surgeon General of the United States, presented. And he said that the US spend 19% of GDP on healthcare, and 75% of that is spent on preventable disease.
Wow.
And he said, you know, people can say what they like about genetics, he said, but cancer and heart disease and diabetes are lifestyle diseases. People give them to themselves by the way they live. Now then what happens is we then have a healthcare system that is profoundly overloaded with people needing care because they haven't taken care of themselves. They haven't taken responsibility for their own health and well-being. And you can blame advertisers and McDonald's, but actually we all know. We all do know, you know. But so what then happens is that you've got staff, you know, the cost of running the healthcare system is outrageous. And so there's this constant pressure on staff numbers, shift lengths, the whole works. And I've spoken at length with nurses who work in emergency departments who do shift work, and the pressure and the demands they get from families and the emotional abuse, and like it's full on.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And because of all that, most people don't know this statistic, but deaths by medical negligence, you know, mistakes in the medical system, whether it be wrong drug, too much of the wrong drug, surgical mistakes, infections, all that sort of thing, in Australia every year is over 40,000 people.
Wow.
It's the third biggest cause of premature death.
Yeah. And so then that's like the major implication, obviously, on the patient and then the patient's family. But that's also a major implication on the person who made the mistake, because they're carrying the shame, the guilt, the lack. They've studied years and years and years. They don't want to admit what they've done because that could get them out of a job. The legal system come in now crazy on all that stuff. And there's very little support around for healthcare practitioners. So it's a massive, massive impact.
I've had family and friends who died from medical negligence. You know, like my grandfather died from medical negligence.
Yeah.
A very dear friend of mine who was an absolute health guru and a legend in sports conditioning, incredible guy, and he got bone cancer. Now, we can talk about the reasons why, and I'm pretty sure there's pretty good reasons why, because he was a little bit old school and he pushed himself profoundly hard. Anyway, he did pretty well treating it naturally, but it was just that last of it he couldn't get. And he talked with the oncologist, and the oncologist said, look, we can give you a double dose. Instead of having, we'll just give you a double dose of chemotherapy and really hit it. And he said, yep, let's do that. I'm up for that. So he went into hospital, but some mistake was made and he got given a double dose and he died. You know, it's like amazing, you know, but it's like, I would not point the finger and blame anybody in that situation, because as a whole society, we're not taking responsibility. And we're creating that situation where it's an unfixable situation until we do something about how we live our lives. And making a decision to prevent our own fatigue is a good step, because it requires some positive lifestyle change.
That's exactly right. And, you know, it's also, I suppose, a culture and a system, or a systems culture, that starts to support this whole idea that fatigue can kill, and that it's not, especially in the healthcare system where so many people are impacted and it's someone's life. And it's not just like in construction where it's the person's life that's made a mistake, it's somebody external's life. Really, it's so many areas have to accept this situation as being real, and changes needed to be made in order for anything to be different. Which is a massive topic on its own. So if we then move on, and we've looked at over a number of different industries, you know, some of these implications and some of the impact that fatigue is causing, let's now talk about ways that we can prevent it. So, you know, you mentioned that lifestyle and lifestyle choices that everybody's making and self-responsibility is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So the obvious area, like I pointed out in your intro, that you saw that was being written about was sleep or sleep deprivation causing fatigue. And there's no doubt about it that I'm sure that is one area that has an impact.
Yeah.
But if we look at other areas that are having an impact, because that's kind of the obvious one, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners, it's not, brain scientists to go, all right, you need a good night's sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we've discussed the sleep apnea and the snoring that can affect that. But what are the other areas and the other lifestyle areas and wellness areas that can be addressed to reduce your fatigue levels?
Firstly, from a physiological level, it's all about oxygen.
Yep.
You get oxygen to your cells, they then easily metabolize glucose and they provide energy, so your body can do what it needs to do. So what is it that stops oxygen getting to the cells? Well, the first one that's really interesting, and most people, they have a huge aha moment. Why is the person yawns at 10:30 in the morning?
Because they're thirsty.
Well, that's the thing, but see, it's like people have lost their thirst reflex because we're constantly wetting our mouths at things that don't hydrate us very well, like milky coffees and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But see, during the day, one of the key functions the blood serves is to remove heat from the core of your body. Your body's generating enormous amounts of heat all the time.
Yeah.
And if you don't get rid of it, you cook yourself. And the way the body does that is it traps the heat in molecules of water in the blood and then deposits those molecules of water in the sweat glands and in the lungs. The water that goes into the sweat glands just evaporates off into the atmosphere. Mm. And the water that goes into the lungs comes out as water vapour in your expired air. That's why when you're on your sunglasses, you leave a vapour there.
Yep.
So there's this water constantly leaving your body and it's coming from your bloodstream, and your blood has to replenish its water supply. And it does so by drawing water from the bowel, which is the body's water tank. Now, if there's no water in the bowel and the blood can't replenish, it can't stop giving water away because you'll cook yourself.
Yeah.
So as the day goes on and the water level in the blood drops, the blood volume drops and the blood starts to thicken, which then compromises the efficiency of circulation. And the first symptom is your body notices a slowdown in blood supply to the brain, which means your brain's not getting enough oxygen or glucose. So the first thing it does is switch on a reflex designed to enrich oxygen supply, and that is you start yawning.
Yep.
Now, what happens with most people when they start yawning, they go looking for a pick-me-up.
Yep.
So they go and smoke a cigarette, get a shot of nicotine, or they'll go and have a coffee, or they'll have a soft drink, or they might talk to themselves about how much they've been exercising really well lately and my blood sugar must be low, so I probably should have chocolate, right? Or whatever it is they do. And they come back to their workstation and feel better, but the reason they feel better is because they walked, and the walking pushed their blood pressure up. So eventually the symptoms come back, and what happens then is the brain goes for plan B, and the second reflex is designed to slow down the metabolic rate to reduce heat production, and two, to get the body horizontal so that blood will flow more easily to the brain.
Yeah.
That's why people start feeling sleepy during the day.
Yes.
And it's the reason people fall asleep behind the wheel of motor vehicles is because they're dehydrated. Most people don't realise that they should be drinking a litre of water for every 25 kilograms of body weight every day. And if they're not drinking that amount of water, they're probably going to be dehydrated. Now, there's all sorts of other side effects that trickle off from that. But in hot conditions, they need a lot more. And the best way to monitor that if you're in hot conditions, like, for example, if you're an office worker and you work in your garden on the weekend in summer, how do you know whether you've had enough water? You should be having a big urination every 2 hours, and the urine should be watercoloured.
Yeah.
And it's pretty simple to follow it that way. And so consequently, I've had construction workers out in the north of South Australia, out in the desert. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we test them. Their urine is bright orange. It's so dark. And they've already consumed 15 litres of water.
Wow.
So it's pretty significant, So hydration is the big daddy. And if everybody just stopped there and handled that, their life would improve profoundly.
Yeah, totally. And so just on the hydration issue, I know a lot of people do struggle just to drink a lot of water. And it is a practice, and it's starting off small and increasing it, getting into the habit until your body's used to having that amount. Because in the beginning, you will go to the toilet a
Heaps.
lot because you've got to dump that supply, I suppose, that you've been carrying in the beginning, that that excess that sort of saves you when
Especially
you're hydrated.
females.
Yeah, so you've got to get rid of that and then let it...
my suggestion is start off at half a litre for every 25 kilograms and build it up over about 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Because that's how long it can take the body to readjust and get itself back into a good, healthy hydration cycle.
And you're nicer than me because I tell people like 25 to 34 mils per kilogram of body weight.
Okay.
So it's if something like water is something people struggle with.
Yeah.
Does it make a difference if it is say obviously coffee or tea is different because it's a diuretic and then it's having the opposite effect because of the caffeine. But if it is, say, winter and people are having a lot of soups and there's a huge water content in that soup, is that ample? Does that add to your water?
That's going to help. And I think ultimately they've got to look at their urination pattern as their indicator. The other thing that I tell people is, like I carry a 1 litre glass water bottle with me. Now, I wouldn't ever recommend you have that on a construction site. Glass bottle.
No.
But you can get really good, really strong, heavy plastic water bottles that don't leach any
or stainless steel
EPCs, any petrochemical residues from Rebel Sports, those sorts of things. But I tell them, look, if you get sick of the flavour of water, drop a peppermint tea bag into it, or a ginger tea bag, or a lemongrass tea bag or something. And the construction workers look and they go, oh, I can do that. And they do.
Yeah, or even a slice of lemon.
Yeah, you bet. And that's really common in Queensland. When you walk into places, they'll have big jugs of water and there'll be a whole lot of chopped mint in the water or a slice of lemon. Same, I've just come back from Florida. Yeah. You see it everywhere in Florida, sliced fruit in the water.
But I think, even like in winter, it is often harder to drink colder drinks or even room temperature water. So I drink a lot more herbal tea. So it's kind of the same thing, replaces water. And I think that that's important for people to know that drinking a glass of herbal tea is equivalent to drinking your water. So it's just fluid as long as it doesn't have the caffeine content, which has the opposite effect of hydration.
I tell them no soft drink flavoured water.
Oh, yeah, that too.
No coffee flavoured water and no beer flavoured water.
Yeah. I'm sure they don't like to hear the no beer flavoured water.
Oh, they're funny.
Yeah.
But what's really encouraging though, Lisa, is that I've found that with men in construction industry, mining industry, wherever I've done this, if you support them to understand what's going on, they just grab it with both hands.
That's right.
They really, because they like to know. They don't like being told what to do. But if you help them to understand something and it makes rational, logical sense to them, they just run with it.
Yeah,
it's very cool. And they start holding each other accountable, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's great. So we've got the hydration and that's the oxygenation sort of stuff as well there. So what about other parts of the body that can affect, and lifestyle things that we do to our bodies and choices that we make that can affect our fatigue levels?
Okay, so if we can take a little sideways step to explain something.
Sure.
At the 2015 Global Wellness Summit, there was a huge amount of excitement because there's a new paradigm being created for human health. And on the last day, Deepak Chopra got up on stage and he took us through it.
I think I listened to this talk.
You might have. And it was pretty incredible. And there's 3 levels in this paradigm: genome, microbiome, epigenome.
Yeah.
And basically, in any human body, there's about 100 trillion cells. But less than a tenth of those cells are human cells. That's the genome. See, bacterial cells outnumber human cells by 10 to 1 in our bodies.
Wow.
10 to 1. They're much smaller. But the human cells is all the genetic material that makes up our skin, bones, muscles, organs, hair, connective tissue, nervous system, the whole lot, blood, The rest of the cells, the microbiome, is all bacteria, hopefully good quality, friendly, aerobic bacteria. And you see, the genome, your whole body is covered in bacteria. That's why I have hair on our arms, so we can colonise bacteria. It's why we have more concentrated hair in certain parts of our body so we can colonise more bacteria. And you see, your lung cavity is part of the external surface of your body. It's teeming with bacteria. Your gastrointestinal tract is part of the external surface of your body. It's teeming with bacteria, right? And so when the microbiome is fully flourishing and thriving to its peak, it creates like a beautiful cocoon around the genome, and the genome can't get sick. And it functions at its optimum, fully energetic and fully alive. But we've spent the last 100 years doing everything we can to beat the hell out of the microbiome because we didn't understand it. We thought it was just germs.
Yeah.
You know, germs that do funky stuff in terms of breaking down food, but whatever else, you know.
Yeah.
But when we look at that and we start to see how people's microbiomes have been compromised, number one, antibiotics. Now, we're at a point in time in this society, we don't need antibiotics anymore. Leave them for hospital use in extreme cases, out in the community, get rid of them. We don't need them. In fact, a lot of GPs now, when people walk in, they've got a cold and they're demanding antibiotics, the GPs are sending them down to the health food store to buy probiotics, which is what builds your microbiome. And it's so cool because now pharmacies are advertising probiotics. You could never get a probiotic at a pharmacy 10 years ago. So that's really cool. You also notice fermented foods like Korean kimchi, kombucha soft drink, all those really high probiotic foods really coming into the market. I've got construction workers all over Australia brewing their own kombucha.
Amazing. It's
really cool. State manager of one of the big construction firms rang me up one day and he said, you got a minute? I said, yep. And he said, I just come back from Townsville. I said, oh, good. How's Townsville? And he goes, good, but I need to tell you what happened up there on the weekend. I said, what happened up in Townsville on the weekend? Thinking something bad had happened. He said, all the blokes on Saturday afternoon went to a kombucha making workshop. And I said, that's priceless. And he goes, no, you don't get it. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, it's effing Townsville. That doesn't happen in Townsville.
Oh, my God. And not only does it happen in Townsville, it definitely doesn't happen generally around a whole lot of construction blokes.
Yeah, amazing. I did some work for a big steel production company, and the safety manager rang me and she said, some of the guys in the factory are brewing their own kombucha and bringing it to work. It's like, yes, that's what we need. So really helping the microbiome thrive is just extraordinary. And you see, when your body's pH is very sensitive. The pH of your arterial blood is 7.4. Your venous blood, 7.35. If the pH of your blood dropped down below about 7.3, you'd die. So it's very sensitive. And you see, your microbiome needs a really nice pH. Like a pH with a balance, in a swimming pool with a balanced pH is healthy water, right? But see, Coca-Cola or all soft drink causes profound levels of acidity in the body. And then what that means is that anaerobic life forms like yeast infections and anaerobic bacteria and viruses start thriving in your body and your microbiome starts to die. See, there was one study I looked at that took 45-litre tank of water. They set the pH of the water to 7.4, poured in a single glass of soft drink, gave it a stir, let it settle and remeasured the pH, and the pH had gone from 7.4 to 4.6.
Wow.
There's no such thing as healthy soft drink.
No.
And see, I will stick my neck out here and say right now, one of the biggest causes of ill health and fatigue in our society is soft drink.
Wow.
Yep. And soft drinks.
So let's put taxes on that too.
Well, they should carry the same taxes as cigarettes do. And Mexico, they're really worried about their obesity growing in that society. So they slapped a tax on soft drinks and their obesity rates went down.
Well, I think that the other issue is that there's, I suppose, in the media, this whole idea of sugar has being a problem has really risen in the media over the last few years. So people are now aware sugar being a problem and therefore soft drinks being a problem. And I mean, for many years, the industry has combated that with even worse, which is the artificial sweetener, which is
it's worse, by the way.
That's right, a bigger problem. But another thing that I'm seeing, and I see this because of my own children who want it, is the so-called waters that are just being flavoured. And so I'm wondering, what's your take on that? Is that better than soft drinks? Is that just as bad? Is it, because they're marketed pretty well.
Yeah, no. Look, I reckon that the way to do it is, number one, to have a really, really good water filtration system at home. And there's a fantastic company in Queensland called Zazen, Z-A-Z-E-N, and they are a social business, and they put water units in schools. And I've got one of their water units. They're brilliant. And then what you then do is learn how to make your own kombucha and get your kids involved in it. And you can make amazing flavours. Like my raspberry kombucha rocks.
Yeah.
Like
I'll have to try it because I'm not a big kombucha fan.
Yeah.
And I've had really good homemade kombucha, but there's something about the off taste in it that I struggle with.
Yeah, so a good kombucha, you won't get that.
Yeah.
And it's my raspberry kombucha is really fizzy. It's
fizzy.
Really fizzy. Like a good kombucha should be very fizzy, like normal soft drink. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the kombucha you buy in store bought is terrible.
Yeah.
But still, so that's something you can do at home. But you're going out and the fridges are all there when you're getting petrol or at the supermarket or wherever, and you're saying no to the soft drink and no to possibly some of the juices because they've got as much sugar as the soft drink.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, well, what about the flavoured water?
Yeah. See, I would then go back to Caroline McLean, who was a parenting coach who I went to when my kids were born, because I thought, I'm not going to parent the way my dad did. I need to learn how to parent.
Yeah.
And she had some great tips. And the one that relates to that is preparing your kids before you go out and making agreements with them.
Yeah.
So now when we go out, we're not going to be buying any soft drink, and you're going to see stuff that you want. We're actually not going to be buying it, and it would be really cool if you don't ask me. Now, if you want to take some water or some homemade kombucha with you so you've got a drink, that's fine. You can do that.
Mm.
Another thing you can give kids is if you buy organic apple or pear juice and dilute it down.
Yeah.
So they've got the flavour still.
Yeah.
And you start them on that when they're really little, so they never get used to the rich taste of the full strength. And then just say to them, and create the agreement with them. And so that when they ask, you can just look to them instead of saying no, which creates a competition, is just say, do you remember our agreement?
Yeah.
And that works. I mean, because what we don't realise is that while kids mightn't have the articulation and the language that we have, they're as smart as us.
Oh, no, they're smarter.
And they know. They know. And, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's so we've addressed when we're looking at some of the ways to prevent this fatigue, we've addressed the hydration issue.
Mm-hmm.
We've looked at the pH balance within our guts and obviously the drinks that we're having that are causing the change in the pH balance and causing the fatigue.
Yeah. And one of the offshoots of that is yeast infections.
Yes.
Because, man, yeast infections can leave a person feeling really drained and really tired. Yeah. And that comes from sugar, comes from eating too much processed grains, drinking too much alcohol, but it can also be created by a lot of emotional stress.
Yeah, massive.
And all those things are things that we can control if we decide we want to,
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Yeah. So I suppose
I've seen electron microscope pictures of yeast plants growing in people's bowel that are so significant that they've plunged roots through the walls of the bowel to anchor themselves in. Like, really, they've just taken over the environment. And so removing that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to remove that.
So, if we are then, people are really tired and they feel that they're that they're addressing the hydration issues, they're getting good sleep, they're active, so they're fit, there's a big chance that they've got gut issues.
Gut issues or
yeast infections.
There's something going on in their mind.
Yeah.
And here's a really simple explanation of it. And this is what people do to themselves, okay? So, like if you put your fist against your hand and you push one way and you push the other way, what happens if you push with equal force? There's no movement, right? But if you keep pushing and just keep increasing the pressure, and I said to you, just keep doing that for a couple of hours, how would you feel?
Tired.
Yeah. So here's the thing. People want a job. They search through Seek. They find the job. They think, yeah, I really like the look of that job and the pay's good. So they go over the top with their resume and their interviewing and everything, and they get the job. So they did everything they could to get that job because they wanted that job.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic for 6 months, 12 months. But then they start to get into a period where they start to lose a little bit of their inspiration, and they arrive at work and start wishing they could be somewhere else.
Yeah.
So here they are at work, wishing they weren't at work. So it's the fist on hand thing. And then they're trying to push through that all day.
Yeah.
And so in their mind, they've created a tug of war that sees them being completely exhausted by 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And all they need to do is stop, reconnect with their inspiration for having the job, talk to their boss about finding a new inspiration for them to get them more excited about the role, and reconnect and redecide to be there. You know? And then they're right. They can go again.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. Some organisations, you know, when, I mean, I could go on and on about this, but it was one of the massive construction projects. It was the biggest removal of earth in the history of Melbourne.
Mm.
And these guys, they had 63 days to dig up a valley, pull
Wow.
out train lines, dig up a valley, okay, lay new train lines, turn 3 roads into bridges and build 3 new train stations and get the trains running again. 63 days they had to do that. They brought in mining trucks for this job. Before it, they were going insane mentally, resisting it, worried about it. I went into the office and they were telling me how bad it was going to be. They weren't going to see their families. It was really awful, right?
Yeah.
And I said to the boss, get them in a room, we need to talk to them. So we got them in there and we talked about what they're actually doing. And we talked about the benefit of rail in a city, Melbourne being the world's most livable city. And when they finished their job, what they was going to do in terms of freeing the roads up, people get to and work from work quicker, which means families get more time together.
Yep.
And those train lines would allow people who don't have cars to get to and from the city. Because once that Frankston line and the Dandenong line are finished, they'll be able to run trains every 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? So Melbourne's going to come alive. And it's going to create communities. And I just said, you guys, what you're doing is laying the foundation for young families in the future to build.
Yeah.
And like these guys, everything changed. By the time we finished, I wanted to start right then, you know.
Yes, totally.
And in the end, what happened was, over that 63 days, they bussed 800,000 people between Moorabbin and Caulfield.
Yeah.
There was not a single incident or injury. They finished the job a day and a half early, under budget. Wow. And it became Melbourne's biggest tourist attraction for that period. There was people 5 deep at the fence watching the project. As the workers would work around the boundary, punters would grab hold and go, mate, what are you doing over there? Wow, it's amazing. What do you do after that? There was just interest. The community was behind them because they shifted their attitude.
That's right.
And they loved every bit of it. And now, I don't know whether you've been down there, but if you go and get on those train stations down there, they're extraordinary. Like, they've done such an amazing job.
That's amazing, you know, and it just really shows how our mental state is and our mindset of how much impact that can have on the way that we feel and how tired we feel. Because when we feel inspired and, as you said, connected to our mission or to something bigger than the actual job, that the day-to-day grind job at hand, it fills us with a sense of joy and purpose. And when we feel that sense of joy and purpose, our motivation and our inspiration and our enthusiasm and our energy goes up.
Goes through the roof.
And, you know, and that can be said, I think, you know, this was obviously an extreme example, which just shows even in such an example of the amount of hard day-to-day work and the stress that needed to be done to complete that project. And they were able to change their mindset in that just by just a shift, just a reframe. We did the same with the major paint company.
That's right. So I said, what are you doing? They said, we made paint. I said, no, you don't. Well, yeah, you do, but that's not the business you're in. And we explored it. And what they ended up coming to is we're in the business of creating beautiful environments where human beings thrive.
That's right.
And I was like,
I'm important now.
It's like, let's get to it.
Yeah.
We can do this even
That's
better.
exactly right. And that's why, and it's so good to see. And obviously a lot of these more trade-orientated workers, they're not online watching these TED Talks on your why and your purpose.
No.
But they are out there at least for other workers to see, and because this happens even just in loads of industries that aren't construction or aren't trade industries, where people get demotivated and uninspired about what they're doing. And it just comes to that connection of really connecting to their why, their bigger purpose and their why, and their company and organisation's why, and then just connecting to their own values. And I just think that this is a really good way to actually sum up, because we're obviously running short of time, sum up this conversation to come back to, I suppose for me, the wealthy meaning WELLTHY, my business, wealthy way of living, and that's that connection.
Yeah, and you bet. And I've got to say to you, like I remember speaking to one of the safety managers at John Holland Group, and he said, since your seminar, he said, I've felt so much more alive. And he said, I've taken care of my hydration. He said, I'm excited about our projects. And he said, that gave me enough energy to start getting up early in the morning. He said, I go to the gym every morning now.
Amazing.
And he said, I'm exercising, so I'm actually really fit.
Yeah.
And it was like, and he said, I never thought I had the time for that, but I've actually created it. Yep. He said, my life is so much more full and complete. And he said, I feel really good about myself.
Yeah, totally. As I say, always, connection is medicine.
Well, and I think this is the mental health thing, I think there's so much mental health problems because people are bored, they're not inspired, and so they're starting to do things in their life like gambling too much, or whatever, which
poor
important
decisions,
that they
poor
don't
choices.
feel good about themselves, and they start to dislike themselves.
That's right.
And then, whereas I always say to these guys, how can you feel good if you don't feel good about yourself?
Yeah.
And one of the beautiful things we can do is practice kindness.
Yep.
Be good to other people, get involved in some selfless service somewhere for the good of humanity, whether it be just taking an old person out for a cappuccino that never gets a visitor, or coaching the kids in footy, whatever it is, doesn't matter.
No.
Something that's not about you, it's about someone else.
Totally. So yeah, that whole message of connect to yourself, connect to others, and connect to the greater world, and that causes that inspiration, that joy, that feel good, and then it comes back full circle that you've, by doing that, you're then reconnecting to yourself, and you've got such a bigger cup full to then be able to complete projects, feel less fatigued, and then have lower your chance of, illness.
Yeah,
just preventing further health complications or issues, and just really getting the most out of your life and what you can do.
Absolutely. It's pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We've covered, quite a lot today. You've shared some awesome stories that I'm sure a lot of people can really relate to, even if they're not in those sort of industries, but it gives a lot of aha moments to really maybe hit home. We've looked at the physical health, and we've looked at sort of more of the mindset and mental health, and it's fabulous. And as I said in the beginning, fatigue is one of those areas which I think that stops people from reaching their full potential, or performing at their best ability.
Mm.
And so, just from chatting to you today, it's so obvious how many little things each person can do, take responsibility, and be less fatigued in their life.
Yeah.
I know just from listening to that, there's a few little things that I could definitely do, or maybe some bigger things. But yeah, that's awesome. So thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to leave on before I wind it up?
Yeah, look, I'll just say that one of the things I think that really helps is to feel good about yourself, dedicate a bigger part of your life to other people feeling good about themselves. And one of the best ways that we can do that is to acknowledge people who are doing good and to encourage others. You know, instead of walking down the street criticising the teenager for the way they dress, acknowledge them for the fact that they're creative and they've put an effort in. You know what I mean? It's a bit of a mindset difference. We've all got our favourite shop that we like to go to. You know, maybe it's a health food store, maybe it's a clothing shop, a tackle shop, whatever. And we stop and realise what it takes for somebody to do that.
Yeah.
The first thing they have to do is sign a lease that could destroy their life. If the business doesn't work, could take their house off them. Then they've got to go through all the planning and take enormous risk and then go through the anxiety of the first 12 months worrying about it. So it's a huge effort. And then eventually they've created this place that you love to go. So what would happen if you found their website, went to the contacts page and sent them an email and say, you know what, I just want to tell you how amazing you are. And these are the reasons why you're so amazing, you know. And you can also write about how you can imagine what they must have gone through starting the business. Like really. And, you know, some of the emails you get back will make you cry.
Yeah, it's so good because we hear so much about the importance of gratitude and what that does for us. But this is taking gratitude to that next level of acknowledgement.
Yeah.
And that therefore does something for someone else.
You
so
bet.
the initial gratitude's good for us, and then the acknowledgement is good for them because everybody ultimately just wants to be seen, acknowledged, heard, and understood.
And there's people out there doing great work in the community. Like there's those people who turn up every year and they're the team manager for the basketball team. Not very glorious, but they make it happen. You know, we've got social media. It takes 2 minutes to get on social media and just say, whole world, I just want to tell you about Bill Smith. What a guy. This is what this guy does. Every year he's there. He's amazing.
Love it.
You know, but ring Bill up and tell him and thank him, you know.
Yeah.
And the more of that stuff we do, we remove the negativity from the world. And you see, whilst we're sitting here waiting for wars to stop and people stop hating each other in other countries, the way to fix that is to handle it in our own space and start being really, really kind and warm-hearted to the people that we do not know.
Yeah, great message.
And we create that in our community and it will have a ripple effect in the world.
Definitely.
You know? And out of that comes energy, feeling good, feeling alive. And the opposite to feeling fatigued is feeling really alive.
Yeah, totally. So that's awesome. That's a great message. Thank you. Yeah, so much awesome contribution there. So thank you everyone who's tuned in today or if you are listening to the replay. So the next show will be in 2 weeks' time, or if you're listening at another point in time, it will be 2 weeks from the date. I don't know what the date is in 2 weeks, but it's first week of July.
5th of July.
5th of July. And we'll be talking more on the eating and nutrition for energy component for human performance. So that will be a really good continuation of some of the things that we've talked about today. So, John, just before we leave, where can people find you if they want more information? If there's someone listening who would love you to come into their organisation and help their workers around this concept of fatigue prevention or even any other health and wellness
Look,
areas.
I'm really easy to find on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Really easy to find there. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Or my email address is jt@aweat.com.au.
And a website?
That one, or fatigueprofessor.com.
Perfect. I'll put all of those details on the show notes anyway. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. I'm Lisa Entwistle, your host and the founder of Wealthy Living. To find out more about my services, you can connect with me online through LinkedIn or Facebook or even Instagram, or you can go to my website at www.wealthyliving, living.com.au. So I'm an integrated life, clarity and wellbeing coach. I do workplace wellness. I'm an event facilitator and host, and I thank you very much for tuning in today. Until next time.
Well done.